Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. I'm not going to say the name, but a self-described divester has told me two things. And without hatred, I want to address them because there's one thing in them that's quite important to you. Now, one thing she said was that it's not black women who feel that they own black men, but rather it's just the pick-me's. Listen, don't tell anybody I'm over here exonerating any kind of black women because I got a reputation to maintain for being misogynistic and don't like black women and all that. Don't betray the truth, okay, guys? But here's the truth. It ain't the pick-me's. The pick-me's, by definition, don't feel that they own us because otherwise they wouldn't feel the need to, try to convince us to pick them. Here's the thing. The second thing is that she said that she actually agrees that black men should move on to other races so that American black women would be safe. Now, it's actually so that American black women would no longer be dangerous. And Western sisters in general, Western women, really. That's the real truth. I don't like thinking of it this way. I don't like walking around with this sort of idea in mind. But unfortunately, gentlemen, unfortunately, that's what it is. See, a lady can hold a knife to her man and the cops show up and kill that man. That happened. But we see that these divestors are jumping over the fence, and I know because as an ambiguous looking black admixed man, I'm part of that fence. The other parts are men that are neither white nor black, so to speak, something else. That's the other part of that fence. And when sisters divest, they go straight from unambiguous brothers, 150% Wolof and 175% Mandingo, even though these percentages don't make any sense. They go straight from that to Zaddy. They jump over us. We are not black enough and we are not man enough because of the non-black blood we might have or evidence thereof, and then they jump straight over to the opposite. They can't do it. We don't own them either. The issue is this. What she is stating is that we are unsafe for them, but it's Zaddy that's knocking off another one of them every few weeks to 2 months. There are stories about this going on that I don't know that you guys know. And what I know about is it seems to happen every few months. I'm saying this, gentlemen, because for 33 years now, about to be 34, I have been dealing with nasty behind false accusations. That's what I've been dealing with from sisters. And what usually they have in common is there'll be some sort of false accusation, rumors, I'll say, because they're not accusations that put me in front of a judge. I've been fortunate. But I also learned how to avoid that. And I was fortunate that Allah allowed what I learned to actually work, because it could have backfired. It could have failed at any point. But rumors, I've been dealing with that. And most people, there are rumors about a lot of people, especially in middle school. But what I learned is that I was dealing with more of them, more easily believed, more easily spread, and that it wasn't stopping when I left high school. That's what makes my experience different. I learned when I got to Morehouse College, it wasn't going to stop. When I got to Morehouse College, it went on freshman year. It went on first semester, sophomore year. And I don't know what was being said by the time I got to my second semester, sophomore year, because that was so academically difficult that I didn't have time to even be outdoors that often. So I certainly was not being seen often by Spelmanites or even Clark Atlanta University students, co-eds. At this point, I was pretty much invisible to them. They rarely saw me. I rarely saw them. This is what wound up being the case. When I finally got academically busy and I struggled that semester and all through my junior year and then the first half of my senior year with really difficult classes that took up time, this is what wound up being the case. I actually felt the safest because you know what? I was so worried about academics that I didn't have time to notice this. But when that academic rigor finished and I was in my last semester and I finally had easier courses and an easier schedule, I had to walk into the Fair Street dorm in which I lived. I think that's what they called it. I had to walk from the classroom buildings past the registrar building. Those of you who've been there know what I'm talking about. And I had to walk across the street from the main front gate to get into Spelman. And there was a Spelmanite lady that passed me in the opposite direction regularly. First time that happened, I thought, well, this might be common. Fortunately, she was preoccupied with something else, and I didn't have to worry about, how to not creep her out and things like that. Because, see, I was so trained in my thinking that I would have blamed myself if she got spooked. I was just used to that happening. I was used to that being the case. You take someone that's decent looking, let alone, and she was cute. Take someone decent looking, let alone built and as cute as she is, you just expect her to get spooked easily. But she didn't go out of her way to get creeped out and disgusted and stuff like that. So I realized she wasn't aggressive. So then I was thinking, okay, well, if this is going to be a regular thing, how do I stay under the radar? Because if I pass her by regularly, even if I don't bother her, I'm going to get in trouble. That's how I was trained by this point. Now, gentlemen, at this point, 2000 had not come yet. So there were certain things that were not going on by this point in time. And I want you guys to keep this in mind. It hadn't gotten as bad as what it is now. But for me, it was already that bad. It started off that way. I came quickly realized that the best thing to do, keep a piece of paper in a pocket. When I would come around that corner to go that route, I would already have it in my hand. I would be looking at it as I was walking. And in this way, I would be under her radar. She'd know that somebody passed by, but it's just another student that's preoccupied with something that he has to read. Not bothering her, not ignoring her per se either, not going out of my way to ignore her or to bother her. Just I had something else I had to pay attention to. That's normal. So I did that and everything was fine. I did not assume that she was a mean person or nice at all. I just knew that I had to do something to fly under the radar. Because if she wasn't mean, she still might have been legitimately spooked. At least that's what I thought was the case. Now, I say this, gentlemen, because what I want you guys to understand is that today, see, I was one of the few guys that had to go through that back in those days. Because my phenotype was not under the radar. Never was the case. It was bad, man. It could get pretty ugly. I was photographed by some journalist for a newspaper that was common throughout the AUC. It was shared by the different campuses. I wasn't the only one. It was several of us that wound up in some of the photographs. I found out later that some Spelmanites singled me out and said he looked like he 9AY. Fortunately, a friend of mine knew them and he said, oh, no, I know that. That's black. He ain't like that. And the ladies were like, you don't know him. You never really know. He told me about this. If he hadn't changed the subject to distract him, one of them would have turned and said, wait a minute, how we know you ain't like that? Because he was saying that I ain't. It was that bad back then for me and a few other guys. The other guys that had it this bad either were ambiguous looking or they wore thick glasses and had other interests, something non-stereotypical, either behaviorally or appearance-wise, or both. We were the ones that went through this at that point. Nowadays, gentlemen, it doesn't matter. And that's why I want you guys to understand that you are facing this phenomena. And a lot of you have known about this phenomena, but you learned about it from within the last decade. So I wanted to give you some benefit of my 2 extra decades of experience dealing with this to help you guys out. What you gentlemen must do is you must become the guy at work or at school that does not elicit any heightened emotion one way or another, positive or negative, in them. They're fine when they see you, you're polite, but when you're not in their sight, they're not thinking of you. You want to be that guy. That is very important. If you can get to be that guy, you're under their radar. You don't want to be too studious in front of them. You don't want to be too academically lazy. And I'm not just talking about in the school environment, but even at work. You want to be good at your job, but you don't want them to know that you're the best at it per se. I'm talking about the sisters that are around. Because see, for me, that last semester, that was an eye-opener because I realized how bad it was. That was when I realized how bad it had been. That's when it came to my attention, because I was all of a sudden back into having to try to duck under the radar after about 5 semesters of not having to do that. 5 of them. Wait, no, I'm sorry. 4 semesters of not having to do that. Sorry. 4 semesters of just being out of sight, out of mind for the most part. Then that last one, I was in their sights again. Plus, one of my partners from Detroit, Michigan. You know who you are. Well, I don't think he's hearing. I don't think he knows about this. I don't think he's hearing this. But one of my partners, family friend, our parents were friends at their college, and then he and I, we've been friends. And he actually said to me, "Yo, Black, you ain't dated nobody from Spelman." And I was like, "No, bruh. Matter of fact, last time I was on that campus was," and I thought about it, and I said, "Yeah, last time I was on the campus was before you got here." His jaw dropped. And I remember him saying, "Why?" And I was like, "Well, I got busy." But the other thing too is it seemed like they felt safer. I mean, I just knew not to go there if I didn't have to. And I didn't have to. So I say this because now maybe you gentlemen can benefit. But the thing is that back then, most of you listening in my audience would not have had to worry about this. Now, within the last decade, you've come to realize the heightened threat that this presents to you, but you've got less time experiencing how to duck under that radar because the radar itself is lowering. The threshold to get on that radar is lowering as time goes on. So one of the things I'm going to tell you is that, for one, if you are if there's anything about your appearance that makes you stand out, you're going to have to work harder to go under the radar. That's the first thing. If they think you're ugly, if they think you're handsome, you're going to have to work harder to duck under that radar. If you're very short, you know how they love to make fun of. They don't just notice you're short; they got to make jokes about it. Oh, if you cannot flirt at all. You can't say nothing about their dresses, nothing like that. Hey, how you doing this morning? All right, have a good one. It's that when you see them, you friendly, but you don't even stare at them long. You're helpful if they ask and it's related to the job, but you helpful quickly. Sometimes if you see that a task is going to take a long time in order to help them, you start it off and then you say, Okay, all right. I know how to fix this part right here. I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to get the expert for the other part that's going to take a lot longer. And you go get a man with a less noticeable appearance one way or another. Not too handsome, not too busted looking, or something they can make fun of. You're going to have to think about a lot of details. And it is a difficult thing to really factor in. And I'm not telling you to obsess. I'm just telling you to think about it, to think ahead of time. For me, that's somewhat easy. Somewhat. You can't let any of them know anything about your interests that are not stereotypical. You absolutely cannot. If you were into, and I'm not saying this because you got to hide who you are because of the shame. That's not it. I'm saying it's because you need to be under their radar so that you don't get first false rumors started about you. And I say that also because false accusations tend to come after false rumors. And last thing I'll say is this. You notice how sisters love to crack jokes about somebody and say, girl, he looked like he, and then you fill in the blank with something negative. That's practice. They started that when they were young because they were practicing being believable when they get older and starting false rumors or even accusations. It's one of the reasons they do it. They're also practicing being on the same page based on appearance. This way, if a rumor starts about a guy at a job, take that as an example. All the sisters will know based on seeing him. As long as they've seen him, they will all know to be on the same accord with the same stories. And a lot of sisters ain't part of this. Many of them don't want to get involved in something like that. There'll be a lot of them that'll refuse to participate in this. But you know how if a rumor starts and it becomes an accusation and then a bunch of people get called in separately and individually to answer questions, this way they'll be on the same accord. There are going to be a lot of them that are actually not going to be willing to make up anything about such a guy. But whoever is willing to will be consistent, and they won't even have to have a whole lot of discussion with each other to get to that point. I told you it's a conspiracy, and I wish that it wasn't. But you got to prepare for you got to prepare for more than a conspiracy than what it is today, because it's going to get to that point. By the time I realized that I was more likely to face something like this than other guys coming up, I was somewhat desensitized. Now it's more likely to be you. I pray that you never need this advice of mine. I pray that it never becomes you. But I see the higher likelihood, and I would rather that you be prepared and never need it than for you to be in need and not prepared. Thank you for listening. Black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-select male power because you don't like it. And black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day. Thank you again for flying with Jet Black Airways, where jet black is also a verb. We hope you continue jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Justice forever.